Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Scott.
And I'm here with a French Canadian.
Yes, we are here with our very favorite French Canadian. And for those of you on YouTube, this will all be subtitled for your advantage. Christian speaks many languages and has been around the world. In fact, I would submit that he's going to be one of our best traveled podcast guests. So we look forward to hearing all of his travels around the globe. So thank you, Christian, so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Scott, for having me. And yes, I do speak multiple languages and have an accent in all of them.
Which is perfect. So there's some fun backstory on Christian. So Christian was actually one of the first members of the Expedition Portal Forum. And Christian has been an executive and one of the owners of originally Expeditions West and now Overland International that runs Overland Journal and Expedition Portal and all of that. And there's a little bit of a fun story. So I was down in Amato for the Overland Expo and I had known Christian for many years. We had done some work together at events in Hollister and some other things. Christian walks up to me very thoughtfully and he says, Scott, I just want you to know that I think I'm going to start my own forum and I'm going to call it Overland Portal. And I just remember sitting there for a second, realizing here's this guy who's far more traveled than me and a technologist like I was at the time. And true entrepreneurial spirit, I responded with, well, instead of you doing it on your own, why don't we do it together? And that started a series of conversations that led to us partnering up on Expedition Portal and making it the best that we could. And that has been 15 years, if you can believe it, that we've been working on this. So for those of you who enjoy the Expedition Portal Forum, Christian has been a key component of that as our Chief Technology Officer from the very beginning. So if you've got anything that you need fixed we'll provide his email address at the end of this episode. We're going to take a brief break and we will be right back. This week's episode is supported in part by iKamper. They make innovative hard shell and soft-sided roof tents that are designed to survive long-term overland use. Their revolutionary X cover won the Overland Journal Editor's Choice Award, eliminating the bulky PVC cover and also allowing for the fitment of crossbars for carrying bikes and kayaks. Their SkyCamp Mini is another award-winning design that provides a hard shell tent in the footprint of a much smaller clamshell model. This is the perfect solution for smaller vehicles or on vehicles where rack space is dedicated to other systems. iKamper believes that the best times are those spent traveling, discovering the world with those you love most. You can find out more about their quality tents at iKamper.com. So some fun history with Christian. That's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about you as the traveler. So kind of give us some background on where you grew up in Canada and what first got that travel bug started for you.
Yes, I'm from Quebec. I'm from a small town near Quebec City called Montmagny. I'm sure very few of you guys have heard of it. And I was talking with Scott about this before the podcast. You know what? The initial trigger when I was in high school, we did an exchange, like a student exchange. It's kind of a long story, but essentially we traveled all the way up north in Quebec in a small village called Ivo-Hivik. First Nation there, like really, really remote. It's technically, I think, the northernmost village in Quebec. And so when you're like 14, 15, and then you go there and you come from your small environment, you really haven't seen too much. And you get there and you see such a different world. You know, even though it's the same province, it's the same country as yours, but then you realize, wow, you know, the way that people are living and the experiences that they have and everything was such a shock and in a good way. You know, it was very interesting. And I remember it was also very kind of, I don't know if shocking is the right term, but the way it will work is we're paired with someone local. So we'll spend, a few weeks living in their family. And then
incredible.
It was supposed to be a match like, a guy with a guy.
Yeah.
But it didn't really, the count wasn't there. So two of us got matched with two women there.
Yeah.
And we went to live in our family. But we became really good friends with all those people, after a few weeks. The second part of the trip was that they will come to our town.
So cool.
And I always remember, it's been many years now, but I was in high school, and when they all came in high school, everyone was it was such a different vibe because they had never seen First Nation people in our high school. And for us, they were our friends. So there was no more, difference, or there was no more. This whole experience kind of really, really set up the tone for the next 30 years of my life.
And when we talked about the experience you had with the First Nations people, one of the things that we discussed was they're so happy And I've experienced that around the world. And so have you, Matt, is that day to day in North America, we are just surrounded by people that just aren't very happy.
Yeah.
They have so much.
I'm not very happy.
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah, exactly. It's not even a negative thing to say that someone's not happy. It's just an awareness that happiness does not correlate to possessions at all.
Yeah.
And happiness, even very rarely after your basic needs are met, correlates to wealth either. So there's a lot of very unhappy, wealthy people, but I have certainly seen many more happy people in their original communities, in their country of origin, living their life the way that their ancestors lived. Yeah. They are just filled with joy. They're laughing and playing, and the kids are all running around and the families are close. Yeah, I'm not so sure that, modernity has actually given us much advantage as humans.
Yeah. Apple TV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Has that really helped? Has that really helped anything? Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole different discussion. It's a very topical topic.
It is.
In that case, I will agree with you. I don't think that any of the things that they have now, the possession or the newer homes or the snowmobiles or whatever, I don't think that really brought more happiness than.
I don't think it has. And that's the beauty of travel. And that's the beauty of you having that experience so young in life. You started to really question of what is out there? What else is out there to experience in the world that you have no idea about, that you would feel totally new as a new experience for yourself? What came next? You went to school and you ended up getting a degree. Talk about your education and.
Yeah, so I went to school. So actually what came next, I went to school. I went in Quebec as a civil engineer. So I studied to be a civil engineer. And then what came after that is I heard about people doing this kind of volunteer program in West Africa. So right after college, you could spend, I think it was like a 3 or 4 months training different aspects of volunteering work. And so I did that with a few friends, and then I went to West Africa.
And what was the first country? What was the first country?
Mali. So we came down to Mali and Bamako. For different reasons, I ended up working in Burkina Faso.
Okay.
And I got transferred to Burkina Faso, and then we worked there for over a year, building wells, all kind of remote villages and all kind of places. And so I got to travel all through West Africa at that time. It was phenomenal.
And I remember telling me this story. So you're in West Africa. You're there as an engineer to help build out water infrastructure for the villages. And you were driving the NGO there. They had, or the company there had Chevrolet pickups.
Yep.
You felt like you got to experience Africa fully because you broke down in every village. And so you were able to like really soak up the experience of the country.
Exactly. I mean, I know you drive a Chevrolet now. You have a Chevrolet truck, so we should be careful.
So far it's been flawless. But I think back then, I think in the early 90s, they weren't so great.
Well, yeah.
I don't know, man. If this guy can break a small block Chevy, I don't know if I want him driving my car.
Yeah, and to be fair, they had came from a different project. I think that was in Benin or some other country, and they had shipped a truck over to us. We had 3 or 4 of those, and so that must have been late 90s, I guess, 97, 98, and they were like 1,500. They were like the light duty trucks, and they were being abused a lot. So we had one. We had to keep one truck. I remember that we had one in the yard that was almost brand new, and it was just for the parts. We had to keep that truck for spare parts because there was no spare parts at all over there. But then, yes, to your point, so many times, like I will drive, because what happened is our team that we're doing the drilling, they will camp in the bush, every day, every night, and they will go from one village to another. And my job most of the time was to drive from our base camp and then find them somewhere and then bring them supplies, because they will always need like some water or some special stuff for the wells and all kind of materials. So I would drive a lot with these trucks.
Sure.
And most of the time in places that were very hard to find because they were not really on a map or on the main road. And then I remember that like the villagers, the local people would have a name for the village, but it would be a different name than the map. And it would be a different name than the report, where they were supposed to be. So we end up driving in circle, everywhere.
And GPS would have just started.
Yeah, we had no GPS. We had only paper.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. No cell phone, nothing. When I think back about it, it was a little bit crazy to send, a couple of young Canadians, over there with no.
But you're so nice. You're so nice.
Yeah. But I remember like a few times coming back on the back of a moped, like there will be like someone local with a small moped with a rack in the back. And then I would say, can you take me back to the first phone? And they would drive me for a few hours to the phone where I could call the base, and he would come pick me up the next day.
Well, and that's kind of what started your love of Land Cruisers. So you started to use Land Cruisers in Africa, and you realized like this is the right tool for the job.
So there was a couple of things that happened. So we had those trucks, and I remember where we were, there were very few expats or very few foreigners. carabiners. And I remember there was those two guys that showed up one day out of the blue. And they were actually from a small town near my town in Quebec because they come from a long family of drilling.
Okay.
Father, grandfather, and they are very well known for drilling, and they were there to look gold.
Okay.
So they were pretty much on their own looking for gold, and they had an old beat-up Land Cruiser that had like 500,000 miles. And they didn't even care. They were just driving this thing everywhere. And I was like, I was a bit jealous. You know? I was like, okay.
That sounds like a reality TV show.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it was before. Yeah. And then the final trigger was when I went to my friend's wedding in Dakar in Senegal. And I remember also very clearly in my mind, I met this French guy, and he had just arrived from Paris driving an FG40 with a rooftop tent. And I was like, to me at the time, that was the coolest thing in the world. Like there was nothing else you could do that was more cool than driving an FG40 across the Sahara.
It still is. It's
probably still is. Yeah. I was like, okay, this is going to be my life now. And it has been pretty much, yeah.
You're drilling in the wells. How long did you do that for? And then where did you travel to next?
So that was about a year, more or less. Then I came back. Then we did like Vancouver, like the West Coast, a few things here and there. And then I came in the US almost by accident. Very, very, very quickly, I got a job offer one day. I was working in Montreal. Our company went down the day before Christmas.
Oh.
It was a small startup. Very nice guys. One of my best friends. And then we got a memo on the 22nd.
Party's over.
Yeah, party is over. And then maybe a month after, I got a call and I moved to California, made a bit of money. And then my only dream was to go back and travel. And then that's how we ended up buying the truck in Australia. So a couple of times in my life, I took sabbatical.
And when was Australia for you? That
must have been early 2002 or something like that.
And where did you buy that? Bought that in
Sydney. How much you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's
trucks,
talk about it, of course.
To me, I mean, after Africa and after all those experiences, it was clear that the Land Cruiser was the best option. And the best Land Cruiser was a troop carrier.
Sure.
And the best place to find one was in Australia.
Okay.
So we just did 2+2 and then we're like, well, let's go to Australia and start our trip there. So we did that. We flew into, technically we started in New Zealand. So we spent some time in New Zealand and then we went and I bought a truck pretty much on scene and then started driving.
What did you experience in New Zealand? I ask people a lot about New Zealand because I've never been there.
Oh.
And it's one of those places that I so want to go. Have you been, Matt?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to move.
Okay, that's right. No, I did know that.
That's our backup plan.
You're right. I did remember that. You told me, Scott,
it's really
my
really
only
cool.
plan B is New Zealand, however that looks.
Lush green landscapes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Black sand beaches.
Yes.
And alpine mountains, all within about 10 minutes of each other.
Yeah.
New Zealand's great.
Outdoor,
really big fan.
I mean, anything outdoors, fishing.
And you enjoyed it.
We loved it. Yeah.
Were you traveling with Persephone at this time?
Yes.
Okay, so she's been on all these adventures.
She has been on a lot of those adventures for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. It's nice to have. Well, that's one thing also that I realized throughout the years. I mean, everyone is a bit different, but for me, I really like to experience something with either a friend or my partner.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to just keep all that for yourself. I've done some travel sometime by myself. I was like,
You just turn into a drunkard. I mean, that's what happens. Really what happens.
Yes. No, you end up in
You meet somebody at a hostel.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
3 a.m, 6 days later.
That's true.
That happened to me in Africa, actually, when I was traveling. And this guy, so I was trying one of my friends from Quebec for a long time. But then after Egypt, he wanted to go to Iran. And so I met a guy in Egypt and we traveled, an American guy, and we traveled together. But then we got to the border of Syria. He didn't have a visa.
Oh, no.
So I remember like, I have to go? I have my truck and my visa. And it's like, the guy was super nice. He's like, yeah, I can't go with you. We just kind of split. And I did all of Syria by myself. And that was right before Arab Spring.
Oh, wow.
It was a few months before the whole thing.
Oh my gosh. I remember that now.
Yeah. I was at the time I didn't know. I mean, you could tell there was something a little bit strange,
tension,
and there's like picture of his name again,
Assad.
And there's picture of him everywhere. And you're like, it's a bit kind of strange.
Over the top. Yeah.
Over the top. I remember being in Damascus.
This guy really likes himself.
Yeah. I remember going to an internet cafe in Damascus. And then, they asked for your ID and they watch, everything you're typing and stuff. It was kind of bizarre. You could tell that was not really sustainable for us.
Yeah.
The situation. But yes, I did all that by myself. So I don't really have, anyone to share all those things, at the time. I feel like you're also pushing yourself more when you have someone with you. Like if I go travel together, Kenya or New Zealand or whatever, we're going to be pushing.
You'll be more adventurous.
A little bit further. Yeah.
For sure.
That's true. Let's go back to Australia. So you find this troop carrier in Sydney, and where did you guys go in Australia?
We took the truck, which again, I'm thinking back now and maybe a bit crazy, but the truck was perfect because it was diesel, had 2 tanks, a long range, had a pop top. It was a Tracker conversion.
Yep. Yeah, the Tracker ones are sweet.
There's a couple of ones in the US now. I think I've been talking with a few people who brought some from Australia. So, but it was fairly old. It wasn't even back then. So we took it from Sydney all the way along the coast to Cape York. We did the famous, Cape York that everyone was talking about, which was awesome. It was toured. It was beautiful. And it was right before, I guess, the summer there, which is the season where people don't travel.
Okay.
Because I remember after Cape York, we drove from Cape York across to Perth.
Okay.
So we did the entire, the diagonal traverse of Australia. And I remember stopping in a pub, in an Outback pub somewhere in Queensland, I think it was. The guys were like, yeah, you guys are our last client this season because we had to shut down because it gets too hot after that. Or too rainy, I think maybe.
Probably both, yeah.
Probably both, yeah. And because I remember the guy was like, yeah, we always see a couple of crazy Frenchies at the end of the season.
Germans and French.
Yeah, German and French. So that was us. So we drove all the way there and then to Alice Springs, in the middle. And then from there to Perth.
So cool.
Yeah, that was really nice. And then we shipped. By then our visa had expired. I forgot in Australia, I think they give you like 3 months or 6 months. I forgot. Days, but it had expired. And so we shipped the truck from there to then
Durban,
yes, in South Africa.
That's
That's the place to ship it into.
Yeah. And then we kept the truck. And initially the thought was to take the truck and then drive across Africa. But we ended up liking it so much there that we kept the truck there for years.
Yeah. And it's stunning.
5 years. We keep the truck. Our friend has a ranch near Pretoria, and we're just flying out with the truck and go to Namibia and Zambia and Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and all over for years until eventually then I got the time and a friend of mine from Montreal, and then we drove all across Africa.
Talk to us about your route up Africa.
So we left from Cape Town. We actually went again, sometimes some memories, right, stays more vivid in your mind. But I remember we went to Cape Town and then we met a guy there from the local Land Cruiser. So we spent a few weeks at his shop building the truck, fixing up some stuff on the truck. And then we kind of did the official start of the trip. So we went down to Cape
Agulhas.
At the bottom, where it's
Agulhas, like
the northern, I guess it's the southernmost point.
Uh-huh.
And I remember it was so windy that when
it's crazy windy there.
One of the door in Land Cruiser kind of snapped open.
Oh no.
Broke the hinges.
Yeah. It's super windy there.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, that might not be the best way to start the trip, but that's okay. So we fixed the door and then we started going up to Namibia, then across to Botswana. I love Botswana. Botswana is phenomenal.
That's on my list.
Yeah, that's right, Matt. You're ready to go there. So you went into Maun and then explored the Okavango Delta.
Yes. And I was going to say, I think if you want a good initiation for Africa, that Botswana might be one of the best places to start.
I would agree. It's super safe. Super wild. I mean, it's just very remote, packed with animals. Yeah.
Beautiful campsites.
Yes.
Super
incredible.
Organized. So you can fly to Johannesburg and get a truck from there and then drive into Botswana.
Yep.
In the day, I think you're at the border.
Easy.
We loved it there. And then I crossed to Zimbabwe, which was awesome too, because we're in Zimbabwe. And this is what I like about traveling, because those type of things, you can't really plan those type of things. But we got into Zimbabwe right after they had switched the currency to the US dollar because it was the inflation was through the roof. It was also a kind of a wild time because that's where they had all those, kicked out all the white farmers.
Oh, sure.
In Zimbabwe. So there was kind of
it was a challenging time.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, I remember very clearly seeing burn, buildings on the side of the roads, houses and stuff. And it was, but at the same time, it was also very interesting to talk with the people because there had not been many tourists for years. Kind of a scary place, obviously. And pretty much the first tourists going back. I remember going to some lodges there that they were not even open. The guy was like, yeah, you guys can stay if you want, but we don't have anything. Like, well, that's fine. We have everything in our trucks. We have supplies.
Sure.
The guy, they gave us super nice cabins, front lake, and
sure.
And it was awesome. But yeah, those type of experience, they really stay with you.
Yeah,
they
for
really
sure.
And then from Zimbabwe, then we did the kind of more traditional East Coast route. Mozambique, northern Mozambique, which sadly, I think now has some issues. I don't know if you can travel too much there anymore right now, not in Mozambique. And that's why we did the famous crossing with the truck.
Over the river,
the river where they bring those canoes. And that was also quite wild because by that point, you're kind of in a no man's land because your exit of Mozambique, but you're not yet in Tanzania. So your passports, everything has been stamped out. You spend the night there and in the morning, you see those guys coming with wood pirogues. And then the first thing you know, after a few hours, they can assemble this very, very, very dodgy raft together, and you just drive your truck onto this raft, and then you cross the river over to Tanzania.
So awesome.
That was cool. And it's also, so Matt and I last night we're talking a lot, about our next adventure. And this to me is an example as to why I will never have an expensive vehicle on a trip, because when we were there, we actually kind of assessed the risk, and we're like, yeah, there's probably a good 25% chances we won't make it across the river, and the truck is going to end up at the bottom of the river. Yeah. And so I was like, well, now it's different, but back then I had paid $5,000 for the carrier. So I was like, well, worst case, I'm losing $12,000, but I'm not losing 50 or
or the people who go over there with a $250,000 vehicle that they still make a payment on.
Yeah. Yes.
Terrifying.
That's crazy. So I think, I guess you can still do it. I'm not saying don't do it, but you just won't be able to push your limits and do some more adventurous stuff like that. If you have a very expensive vehicle or a very heavy vehicle or a very rare vehicle.
What other lessons did you learn like that on the trip across Africa where you started to recalibrate yourself as a traveler?
Yeah. So one thing I've done, which is going to sound a bit strange sometimes, I've got into countries sometimes without even having, a book or nothing. I will show up at the border and just figure out everything from there. And it's and I do it on purpose. Like sometimes I will plan a trip and you get all the books before or whatever. And some of the time I'm like, just going to wing it and see what happens. And now, especially now with, social media and everything, it's usually quite easy to find out what the best, what best attractions are or whatever.
It might even be better because you got totally current data.
Yeah. Also, and it's forced you to ask people, also ask questions to people and interact with people more instead of being in your phone or in your, but back then we didn't really have, we had the website. I think I had a blog I was publishing and
oh man, what was the blog called? I remember reading that when I was like,
what was your blog?
Two Around the World.
Yeah, that's it.
Kind of me and Persephone. Yeah, and back then blogs, I don't know that blogs are still that popular now.
I think they've kind of been replaced by Instagram.
Yeah, I think so. And now TikTok, I guess. Yeah, but back then that was a big thing. You will write a blog and then post your pictures there.
Yeah.
So that was, and then we did have a GPS though, to be fair. We had Tracks for Africa.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that was great. I find mostly in town when you had to go to your, you drive all day and then you're trying to get to your hotel, overland or place in town in Nairobi, and then at least the GPS would take you there because most of the time the streets don't have names. And
the other thing I really liked about Tracks for Africa is you can see that this is the main road to get wherever you're going, which you can just take that's fine.
Yes.
But oftentimes you'll see this other route and it kind of goes around the mountain and then there'll be some skull and crossbones over there where there was a carjacking or whatever. And then it says waterfall and then
I like Tracks for Africa. I think they're one of the best just maps for overlanders. Almost a shame we've never seen anything like that in the US.
Yeah.
I
guess maybe they're starting to get closer with OnX and stuff, but it's not. It's certainly not at the level of
like a curated map.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I still like a good
map.
Yeah,
no, totally.
Because you use Tracks for Africa in Namibia, right?
Yeah.
Matt, when
I
you
used
did
it in
that big
Namibia,
trip.
then we used it in Tanzania.
Oh yeah. Because you just did your trip to Tanzania.
Yeah. So
you got Africa,
I like
Africa
Tracks
on
for
the mind.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of reminded me of HEMA, I guess.
Yeah. For sure. For Australia. Yeah.
They've both been around for a long time now.
They have.
Kind of like the reference for sure. Tracks for Africa.
It just gives you a lot more confidence to go check out something totally different, which is cool. It gets you off the beaten track.
Yeah. But going back to lessons though, I was thinking about your question. I think the other thing also is border crossing. You know how border crossing is always a hot topic, right? Everyone loves to talk about their border crossing experience. There's always interesting stories. But I think one thing I've learned over the years is just to go with the flow there. And try to fight. I've seen so many people getting stressed out even before getting to the border because they read XYZ things. And as long as you have your paper, in order, usually fine. You may have to wait a bit longer, but we never really had any, especially in Africa, we really had any. I must say also, we got a bit lucky in a way though, because when we did that trip, it was not long after the long way up.
Okay.
Long way down.
Long way down,
sorry. And they remember some of the crossing, they had stickers and stuff, and they remember seeing the bikers and all the crew and everything. So many of them were a little bit more aware of what we're doing. That also makes it easier.
Yeah, you have Obi-Wan Kenobi comes through your through your border crossing. You don't forget that anytime soon.
Yep, exactly. I would say the only one that, and I was telling Matt also last night about this, the only one that will always stick in my mind was the Egypt one, from Sudan to Egypt, because, and I think there's still no road. There is a road, but it's a military road just for convoy. So you have to go on the lake. I think it's Lake Nasser.
That's right.
The way it works. And again, that's where the lesson of going with the flow is very important, because the way it worked, and I could talk about this for hours, but the way it worked is that you will have to leave your truck there because the trucks will go on a barge, but you will go on a ferry. So I remember being on a ferry and seeing my truck on the shore in Egypt and leaving the keys to some local fixer. Essentially, just pray that the truck is going to show up the next day or the next couple of days after, because it was, I think, a day and a half to get.
It's a long passage.
It's a long passage for sure. So you get there, you go to your hotel, and then if you're unlocked the next day or the day after, the truck is going to show up. And again, another reason not to have an expensive truck, right? Because who knows what's going to happen?
Totally,
you never know. In our case, it was quite funny because there were three of us. It was five of us, three with motorcycles and two with trucks. So a Defender and our Land Cruiser, and the three guys with the motorcycle managed managed to convince the captain of the ferry of the ship, passengers, to put the bikes on that ship. But they could only go so far inside the ship. So they could only go where kind of like the main entrance of the ship was.
Yeah.
And they put all 3 bikes there. And they were so excited because they were like, oh, as soon as we get to Egypt, we're going to be out, we're going to be leaving, we're going to keep driving up to Germany. They were from Germany, I think. And that's not what happened. When we got there with the ferry, it became this giant chaos because there were hundreds of people wanting to get off the boat. And the custom in Egypt will ask people to stay on the boat. Everyone ended up being cramped over those 3 bikes. Like I remember like there was like dozens of people like all over the bikes and then everyone yelling and then trying to get the bikes out and to get away of those bikes to get out. And then it took about 5 days to get all our paperwork in order in Egypt because you have to get local driver license, local plates. You have to actually go with the custom guy to the local police station and get all that. I mean, it's a very demanding experience.
Was Egypt worth it for you?
I get to that. I know for these guys it wasn't because the biker guys actually left after us. It got so bad with the custom guy. They wouldn't talk to anyone. The custom told me, I will only talk to you. You're going to bring the papers and everything. I don't want to deal with any of those guys because they were too impatient and they were yelling. And
another lesson.
I was going to use a word that might not be good for the podcast.
That's okay. Paula can bleep it out or moo it out.
Okay, and change it. But yeah, no, it was a circus. Let's say it was a big circus. Then Egypt. So the thing, I don't know. Again, I don't know if we have people from Egypt, but I liked some part of it. I just felt it was a bit of a tourist trap. Like I felt like many of the places we would go were so popular. Like when you have like the big pyramids, for example.
It's one of the wonders of the world.
Yeah. So I used to say when I was there, I used to think it's like snow in Canada. It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get snow. And it was kind of the same with the tourists over there. It seems like it doesn't really matter like how nice they were or not. They knew that there were always going to be tourists coming all the time for years. I mean, there's been tourists for like 200 years over there. So it did not, I don't know. I can't say that the experience was all that great. There was a lot of trash also. I felt like many places were not, maybe it's better now. I don't know, but back then. But that said, I did like the Sinai Peninsula. Also, we went down over there. We spent some time there. My friend at the time was big into free diving.
Yeah, they have all the diving there.
Yeah, and that's a big spot for that.
Wow.
Sharm el Sheikh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's where we were. So we spent quite some time there. But then again, we left that, and then you drive on the coast of the Sinai. And I remember driving like almost a day and seeing all those buildings that were not finished.
Yeah,
and that's because apparently there they had this kind of law that they were going to give people land, but you had to build within 5 years to keep the land or keep the taxes low, but you didn't have to finish. You just had to start the construction. So there was endless, like for miles and miles and miles of unfinished building along the coast. And you're like, Oh yeah, it was a bit of a...
What were because I've never been to the pyramids. So what was your feeling of being like at one of the only remaining ancient wonders of the world?
I was going to say the best one for me was actually in Sudan.
Okay.
On the way up to Sudan.
I've heard that.
Yes. And because there was no one else, there was only maybe like 4 of us.
Yeah.
To the truck there, we hiked a little bit, and that was spectacular for sure.
And that was the Nubian pharaohs, wasn't it, that built those? I think they said, yeah, so cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I kind of want to go back now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
soon.
I remember also when I was in Sudan. Sudan was special. It was so hot. First of all, it was insane because we spent a few weeks in the capital in Khartoum because we were trying to get permit to go drive through Saudi Arabia, and back then it was really hard. Like you had like a business season or whatever, so they kept us waiting for almost 2 weeks, and at the end we didn't get it.
Now it's pretty easy.
Yeah, now it's a lot easier.
Yeah. No, they changed.
Now the car is there.
I'd like to go.
That'd be a cool one for you.
Gas is cheap.
That's right. Prospector. Hammer down.
Next year for Dakar. Isn't Ashley there?
They just were. Yeah. Ashley and Richard Giordano.
Yeah, I saw some pictures.
They were just there. They had a wonderful time. They were there for the Dakar.
I saw the Dakar in Senegal.
Wow.
That would be
way back
cool.
when I was working there. That was phenomenal.
Did you know it was coming, or did you just happen to see these people racing by?
No, I knew I had been watching it even before, but and it happened to be the same time I had the wedding in Dakar.
Okay.
So we went to the wedding, which I think was after Christmas, there's a small island outside of Dakar. And then my friend there, Jan, he was local. He was from Senegal, and he came from a wealthy family. I think his mother was French and his father was the Senegalese ambassador to France or something like that. I forgot the exact situation, but he was very, very well known. Just to give you an idea, his sister was dating Gerard Depardieu for a while.
Oh, wow.
And at the wedding, she was there with another French actor, fairly famous. I forgot his name right now. Wow. He was there at the wedding. It was a pretty big thing.
I would say so.
Yeah, it was great. And then at the wedding, I actually met a local Senegalese guy who had done the Dakar a few times. Oh. And so it was awesome because he had some really good stories, especially because he was from Senegal. And there's very few people from Senegal that were doing the Dakar because it's so expensive. It was not something that was mostly just, foreigners doing it. So it was great. And like spend an entire night in the bar in Dakar. Like we left the bar and the sun was up the next morning, just talking about the race and everything.
Well, and for you to experience the original Dakar in Senegal.
Yeah.
I mean,
because it's likely never going back.
No, I don't think
probably
so.
not. Yeah.
I don't think so. They have another one now that's called the Eco Challenge.
Eco Challenge, yeah.
I need to spend a bit more time looking at it. But I mean, they have the Classic now also that they're doing, the Dakar Classic.
The Classic is really, Amy Lerner did that this year. And
what was her thoughts on it?
You know, I haven't talked to her on it.
We got to get her on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, from following her on Instagram, it looks really fun. She's in an air-cooled 911, which is my jam.
Oh yeah,
Okay, that's the one. Yeah. I read that I think it's like the third seasons now for the Classic.
Yeah.
And the numbers have like tripled. They had like 100 cars.
It just like sounds more fun.
Yeah, it does.
Totally. Way more fun. Way more fun.
Like I always had these like foolish dreams that I'd do it on a motorcycle. No, there's like no way. Absolutely no way. Those people are like superhuman. I watched Lyndon Poskett's video. He did the Maui Moto class, which you are self-supported.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm like, man, I could not ride for 10 hours a day and then sleep for 4 hours next to somebody's generator for 2 weeks straight.
Yeah. Crazy.
Like, I don't know how you do it. Maybe that's why Red Bull sponsors it.
Superhuman.
I find it a bit sad because in the US, the coverage we get to the Dakar is so...
It's just hard to follow, right?
It's
complex. It's constantly changing and it takes, 2 weeks of effort. It's not... My dog's name is named Dakar.
Yeah.
Do you know how much I watch of the Dakar?
Yeah.
Not that much because it's not even the coverage. It's just the fact that it's like...
It's a big event.
It's 2 weeks long. So you kind of check in. And I think the problem these days is you end up following it on social media. You follow the riders or the drivers or whatever, and they're posting and they're giving their little, snippet of the adventure. Like, why do I want to listen to ESPN and find out what I already knew from Instagram?
I did an effort this year to follow it a little bit more, like on a Red Bull website and on the Dakar website. But what I didn't like is they always talk about the same.
What are the other stories?
Yeah, what are the stories? They only talk about like the two guys in the quads and a couple of guys on the bike.
I think it's just such a complex event, again, to follow, to make a constant narrative of, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But then again, when I was there in West Africa, like we had it on TV. Like it was on the news every night and every day. And
so cool. Did it feel like the locals were into it?
Oh yeah. No, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah. They're also into it, getting bribed on the way back. Because
they'll let you come in quickly, but then you got to take your time going back out.
Yeah, because what my friend had not told me, he said, yeah, take my Land Cruiser. He had a 60 series Land Cruiser. I said, take the truck, go see the Dakar. So I left. Then I realized that the plates were expired on the truck.
Oh no.
It had been bought from France or whatever, and they were expired. So every checkpoint, I was getting stopped. And then I was like, okay.
All part of the adventure.
Yeah.
And a special thanks to this week's sponsor, Dometic. When you're heading out, you don't want anything to hold you back. Whether you're planning a week-long adventure or a quick overnight trip to your favorite outdoor spot, we've got you. Dometic's CFX3 powered cooler is designed with any size adventure in mind. The CFX3 allows you to bring more of your favorite food and drink along for the ride, no matter how far you plan to go. Available in multiple sizes, the CFX3 is built for the demands of outdoor use and comes with a handy app that gives you complete control at your fingertips. It's the state-of-the-art, designed for rugged use cooler that you can rely on and enjoy for years to come. That crossing of Africa was not your only adventure in Africa. You got to tell us a story about the limousine to Timbuktu.
Timbuktu, yeah. So the short story is I've been obsessed with West Africa since then. I love West Africa. I've always tried to find a way to go back, one way or another. And then at the time I was working full time, in San Francisco, so didn't have that much time. But I remember my friend had an apartment, and I don't know, all of this kind of makes me old now. It seems things have changed so much, right? Because in just 15 years, right? This was before all the tech stuff, and I mean there was some tech stuff, but he was not like it is now. He had an apartment on Haight in Ashbury, Haight.
Right in it.
Well, it was super cheap, with a terrace on the roof, and we'll go there and dream about our trips, and now this apartment is probably worth 10 million.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so he came up one day and he said, yeah, there's this I think it was Plymouth to Bangui.
Okay.
Charity race.
Okay.
In West Africa. Or maybe I found it. I don't know. But I remember having a drink with him and we're like, okay, so let's do this race. And then the next topic, then which car we're going to take? And then he's like, well, what's the least likely car we can take to this race? So the condition, a couple of beers after, we're like, a limousine. We'll take a limo. So, all right. So, okay. So far we're in the same, so far the plan is,
it's coming together. Perfect.
Very well. So
then sleep inside.
Exactly. Totally.
Exactly.
Totally.
Question there. So, okay, all right. So where?
I didn't think of that. That's so true.
The next question is, where do we find a limo? What's the best place to find a limo.
Yeah, Las Vegas.
So the next day I was on Craigslist Las Vegas and I found a limo, like I won't get in that story, but some local guy had a limo for sale that he wasn't using. He was in the storage place. And Mark and I, we took our Southwest points, we flew to Vegas, we put a new battery, and then we drove the thing back.
It almost would have been better if you had hired the former limo driver to drive his former limo to Timbuktu.
Could you imagine?
And just be blasted in the back the entire time.
Yes. Well, that kind of almost happened in a way. But yeah, so we took the limo back to San Francisco. We spent the summer there with the limo in San Francisco. It was a blast. We took it surfing with a surfboard. We took it to Burning Man. It was phenomenal. And then we drove it across to New York, ship it back to the UK, and then drove it down all the way to Mali. And then a couple of things happened there when we got there. The charity event, the way it was done, we didn't really like, what the money was going and a bunch of stuff. So we decided to not, because the plan actually was to give away the limo to the charity, and then they would raise the money, and then the money will go to some local things. But then didn't really like that. There was some aspect that was not.
Did they not want your limo?
No. It was more where the money was going and the way the charity was done. And
how much actually went to
exactly. Sure. And so we decided to just
always
keep it there
challenge.
And then keep driving and go to Timbuktu. That's why I have this famous picture in front of the airport.
In Timbuktu. Well, and as I understand, and you just gave me an update today, is that somebody posted on the internet a picture of this limo in Timbuktu, and everybody was so confused of how it got there.
Exactly.
It's still there.
Yeah, it's still there. I was looking for it like a few weeks ago because I told the story to someone, and I was looking online to find a picture. Yeah,
we got to go rescue the limo from Timbuktu.
I know. I actually look in decent shape, so I have no because he was. It's one of those.
You can be the one that tries to take it from the local limo driver.
Oh no! It'll be a super fun. It'll be a super fun adventure.
Oh yeah, no.
You got to find a way to make them happy.
Yeah. Well, we've done that. We just did that now in Uruguay with the 4Runner. Went to rescue it a couple of times too because of different story, different situation. But there's an adventure. We did that also. That's right. I forgot to mention this one when we drove across Mexico. The Maya Rally, we still have a Benz in Belize that needs to be rescued.
I remember it's like on a tree farm or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like it's more of a drug dealer farm. Yeah. I was a little bit shocked when I went back a few years ago to see where the limo was, but not the limo, the Benz, but still there.
Very profitable if you drive it home.
Yeah. They're like we'll pay your expenses to drive it back to the U.S. Just don't look in the trunk.
Yeah, I think the lesson again, they're asking about lesson. I think the lesson is you can't really take anything to go travel, and you don't have to spend a fortune and years in planning.
I mean, imagine how much you laughed driving a limo across Africa. It had to have been like there's probably not another car. Like you couldn't drive like the coolest Land Cruiser on the planet would not bring as much attention as a limo.
For sure.
And wasn't it like a pink limo or something?
And no, it was white. It was white, but it had inside it was red, like red leather and velour and stuff inside. It had the antenna in the back, like the Miami Vice type of antenna.
How do you ship a limo?
Roll on, roll off.
Yeah, roll on, roll off. Exactly. There's no container for it.
It had that like V antenna on the back.
There. Yeah, and the sunroof and the mini bar inside.
They had a mini bar.
Yeah, the mini bar inside.
That's so good. It's so good.
Reminds me of like I don't even going to the airport when I was 3 because I think maybe limos died.
Yeah, it was really fun. Even the summer in San Francisco with it because I think it was an 86 or 88, like from the late 80s. So it was like full 80s, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I had this when I went to Pont," and they would all come and talk to us. And then in Africa, like you said, the thing also about having a vehicle like this, it's actually in some strange ways safer because people are so shocked. They don't even think about,
they can't even think about robbing you.
Yeah, no one's going to rob you in a limo.
They're laughing. They're laughing too much.
They're like, what's that? These guys are crazy. You have to be a bit crazy to start with to drive this. So they're like, I'm not going to mess with those guys. They're crazy enough to drive a limo here. So yeah, because I remember, but then on the other hand, oftentimes it's the actual overlanders that are going to look down on you.
Yeah.
Because if the German guy spend, $200,000 on his HD78, and you're there with your limo, that kind of like
two-wheel drive limo. Yeah, exactly.
Take away from his fun, on the ferry. So,
sure.
Not as, friendly with you.
We need more limos driving around the world to keep the egos at bay. For sure.
Limo.
Yeah, more limo.
More limo. Yeah. Now there is, and then the bands, a similar story. I mean, I organized the Maya Rally in Mexico and we bought the bands on scene. It was a 74 450 SEL, the big V8.
Yeah.
And I remember we bought it with the same friend again, Mark. We bought it off eBay for less than $2,000. Super clean. Actually, now I kind of regret a little bit being clean and now they are worth a lot. But bought it from a guy in San Ramon in the Bay Area and then drove it all the way to Belize.
And that's the right car for it too. I mean, a Mercedes Benz for those roads,
was phenomenal.
It's made for it.
It's made for it. And with the big V8 in Mexico, when we had to go on those, not the Autobahn, but the one that has a toll.
Yeah,
Mexico,
sure.
That car has a lot of torque at high speed. I remember trying to follow it when the 4Runner and Mark was gone.
He's
Crazy.
gone.
He was gone. But,
We got to go rescue the Benz.
Yeah,
we got to do it.
fun.
Like the three of us, we're going to plan it right here on this podcast.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to learn how to plan.
I'd rather go for the limo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do both.
We would do both, yeah. But the limo could be more fun, I think.
Yeah, the limo would be an adventure.
Yeah. But you often have overlanders that, like, they finish a trip somewhere and they sell their cars for free, or they just need to move on, or they
You
have
see
an
them on
emergency or
the
something.
Expedition Portal on the forum all the time. People that finish their trip in
Just leave them
South
somewhere.
America, and you can buy them for sometimes pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, because they realize how much money it is to ship them back, take care of it. And then that's how we got our 4Runner in South America.
That's right.
Super nice couple, and they'd been traveling for a couple of years. And then in their case, they decided to adopt a dog in Colombia. And then I think there was some money issue. I don't know the details essentially, but they were in a hurry. They're like, we're done. We want to go. And one was going to buy the truck because it had plates from Alaska.
Yeah, sure.
It's very hard to sell unless you find someone a bit crazy and
Sure.
you need to deal with the paperwork.
And you did. In fact, you had to meet the guy and go to the border together so he could get it out and then get it back in.
Yeah, well,
I think that's what I told you to do, and then you didn't do that.
Exactly. That's the right thing to do.
I remember. That's right. That's right. You said, Scott, how do I get the car out of the country? And I explained how to do it, and then you took a totally different plan.
Yes.
Okay,
That's exactly.
interesting advice. I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So the way you explain it is the proper way of doing it. You go there. The way I did it is they were already gone. They were gone back to New Zealand, and they left the truck at the airport.
Yeah, sure.
And I flew in and I got the keys. I think he had mailed me the keys or something. And then I drove to the Peru. I went up to Peru. And then I got to the border. And to my surprise, I was hoping to just cancel the temporary importation permit, and get a new one in Peru. But to my shock, when I got there, they were both connected. It was the same person who was doing both.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was pretty dodgy. It was pretty iffy because it's like your name doesn't match the name there and the name and this and that. And I was sweating and I was like, well, maybe I won't have a truck after all. And then, the next thing I explained in Spanish a little bit of what was happening. And then after a while, she said, fine. And she stamped everything. And then I was on my way.
I love it.
But again, that's another example.
You've had such great luck with just showing up,
and figuring it out.
Showing up and figuring it out.
Well, and that's the point of like the cheap car, because then you just aren't that stressed. I mean, you would be disappointed, of course, if it didn't work out. But it's not like you spent $60,000 on a new 4Runner.
It was 3,000. I think it was 3,500 or 3,000.
Yeah, $3,500.
That I bought with a friend, half and half.
Yeah, sure.
He was
with Chris Collard.
With Chris Collard.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have hated to tell Chris that I lost the truck, but still, it was probably a 50-50 chances, and I still had everything in my suitcase. I had not really unpacked at that point because I was like, if I take the bus, I need the truck there, then there's some bus, buy.
Oh, you know what we got to talk about? I just realized because we had to send Chris Collard down to rescue our Land Cruiser from Panama. Right. Yes, but you guys first connected
at Panama Passage.
So for those that are listening, there was a period of time. Christian is usually a decade ahead of the trends. This was at least 10 years ago.
This was 2000.
You started this like Overlanders hostel in Panama City.
Yes.
And you got this house down there, and then you hired this young whippersnapper, this ginger-haired young whippersnapper.
I was so drunk. I was 21 years old. I had just left the Midwest, and I was running an Overlander hostel in Panama.
That's right. Yeah, so you actually worked for both of us.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Hopefully someday I'll work for you, Matt. Yeah. Yes, so Christian hired Matt Scott to run Panama Passage and help people get their documents in order.
Yeah, and I'd help people ship trucks and stuff.
Yeah, that was an adventure for sure. That was quite the adventure.
I want to tell one story about a certain someone at this table who hid the fucking AC remote.
Okay.
I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
But
French accent?
Maybe this slightly pampered kid from the Midwest was like sitting there at 2 a.m, like sweating with this fucking fan because it was like 9,000 degrees with 100% humidity. And then you finally give me the code to the safe to like put the cash in for like the $3 that we would have collected from and there's this AC remote in there, and I'm like, oh, you did me dirty.
It did me really dirty.
I sat in that room for like 24 hours at like 60 degrees. No, but really, I think that each Overlander there, I think maybe that place made $3.
Yeah, we didn't make any money there.
Well, because like somebody would come in and it would be like, I don't know, I'm going to make up numbers. It was like $15 a night for a room.
Yeah.
Super reasonable. And then you'd get people that would come in and be like, well, in Honduras, I paid $8. So I'm not paying you any more than $8.32. And I'm like,
what are you going to do?
Like, yeah.
This is Panama. It's a little more expensive in Panama than Honduras.
Okay. Well, can I sleep in the yard for, I'm like, oh man, just pay the $15 to get to bed. Like that's all I do.
Yeah.
No, we didn't make any money. I kind of like
you had that. You had that for a couple of years, didn't you?
Maybe a year. We had Matt was there. My partner Sean was there.
Yeah.
And then Phil was there for a while too. And then we lost the house essentially.
Oh, we lost
the house. But there's a guy.
What year was that though?
I remember we were looking for a new one when you were down there.
Yes, we did. We did try to find a new one.
What was the cab driver's name? Do you remember the cab driver's name? Was it Bruno?
I remember the cab driver. I don't remember his name. Yeah, he would come all the time. But now there's a guy who I haven't met them. I just saw on Instagram. It's called Overland Embassy.
Okay.
And they are down in Panama City. And it's essentially the same concept as I was doing. He's offering place to stay and help with shipping and that type of stuff.
Awesome.
I mean, there's a need for that there.
No question.
For sure. There's a need for that.
Yeah, I think you started that fairly shortly after I had been in Panama. I had driven from Arizona down.
And we took Land Cruiser that we
down to
together.
the Darien.
So I took this one down.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So I had done the trip down to the Darien Gap in 2009. And then it was maybe 2012, 2011. And then you drove the 80 series down.
The KTM in the back.
That's right.
From Ottawa with us.
That's right. And then you left the Land Cruiser there. And then we had to have it rescued. So Chris Collard flew down and drove it back.
Yep,
so fun.
I spent almost a good amount of time there with Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
I went back and forth to Costa Rica a few times.
Yeah.
I love that thing, but taking so much fuel.
It does. It's very
unbelievable.
Yeah, it consumes a lot of fuel.
We talked about that also last night with Matt about the 80s. They were great for a while, but in my opinion now they're too old now.
Well, they're
no less great. They're so old. I mean, and they were just complex enough where now the wiring and
they're classic cars.
Yeah, now they're a classic car.
So it's like,
for sure.
I mean, that's what you're driving around the world. There's this idea that you're going to find parts everywhere, but
buy a 200 and go.
Yeah. We're on the Hilux train.
Yeah.
Fuel economy, comfort.
You look like every other car going down the road.
Exactly. You blend in.
1 metric ton of payload. Yeah. 2,200 pounds.
Payload. So, because right now I'm obsessed with going back to Africa.
Perfect.
I really want to go back. It's crazy.
Well, I'm going in August. So,
but did you see on the forum, there's a person, I don't know his name, who just posted a trip report in Africa that from what I've gathered, he lives in Utah somewhere.
Okay.
He keeps carrier in the UK. So he has little trip report that he did. I think he's done 50 expeditions in Africa.
Wow.
And the last one, he shipped his truck to Dakar and he drove east, all through Mali and Niger and Chad and Dakar, the Central African Republic. And that was a few months ago. And then he went back to Cameroon and shipped his truck back to the UK.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's insane. No one does that.
No one does that.
Now he says that he hasn't seen one single Overlander on the whole trip. It's crazy. And he has beautiful pictures of.
But has he done the Mojave Road?
I don't know.
He's not an Overlander.
Yeah, he seemed like a very interesting.
Seems questionable that he hasn't done the Mojave Road.
Exactly. But so that totally kind of reignited my session with going back to Africa.
Oh man, that's so incredible. So let's kind of start to pivot a little bit. We cannot cover all of your travels because you've done these incredible journeys, including the stuff that you did in the Middle East and the travels that you've done in South America recently and that Chris Collard continues to do. You guys are sharing this 4Runner down there in South America. In fact, I think Chris is down there right now. Yeah. Your travels have been extensive, but what we hope to do is take away some questions. So Matt and I will have a couple questions for you. But one of the questions we do like to ask on every podcast is what's your favorite books?
I got to say travel books.
Yeah.
Lonely Planet was the big one for a while and I still buy them today. I still buy, honestly, I go on eBay. These days, I don't even have to pay the full retail price. I go on eBay and I get a few travel books and I think it's a great way to get excited about trip,
That's true. It kind of primes the pump. You get all excited about it.
Yeah. There's something symbolic about having this on your table when you pack your luggage and stuff and you have the book next to you and you're okay, now I'm going there. And I kept all of them. I have a full library full of all those travel books.
That's awesome.
But there is one collection I will link after. Some guys did. Those are travel books, but it's everything is fake. Entire things is a joke, and it's actually quite funny. I'm fairly sure that some of the jokes will not be acceptable maybe these days. I don't know. Maybe will need to be revisited. But overall, those are very, very funny books. So they have one for Asia and they have they have one for like Central America and, Eastern Europe.
Very cool. What questions do you have for the illustrious Christian?
I guess it's not really a question as much as asking for advice on, you've always kept things refreshingly simple, always kept things really fun. And you've always managed to avoid like the serious overlander stereotype. Like what's your key to that?
One thing is my background. We grew up in Quebec. We have 6 months a year of winter. My first car was a Chrysler Le Baron. It would drive. And then I had a Renault Car. That's what we were driving in the winter.
Yeah.
We didn't have any, there was no Max Tracks. There was no, we didn't have any 4x4. No one had a 4x4 when I was young. And we were living 6 months in like crazy winter.
Yeah, sure.
So when you grow up like this,
it was just another day.
It was just another day. So you don't grow up with all those needs of having the most, crazy vehicle on the planet.
But you've seen California drivers. They actually need 4-wheel drive.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. In LA, everywhere.
It's crazy.
You have 4x4 in LA.
Got to have a 4-wheel drive in LA.
Yeah. So I think that's
it rains there.
Probably the background.
Twice a year.
I think the other part is to not take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
And that again goes a long way on the border crossing because I've seen it over and over.
It does.
People coming, especially in Central America, like so many times you have all those fixers that everyone gets stressed out about and just have fun with them.
Yeah, of course. Smile.
Smile. I remember one time, I don't know again why, but I was at the border in Nicaragua, Honduras, and I had a picture of, the guy next to me, the fixer, had a picture of his girlfriend. They often have that, right? When on your cell phone, you have a picture.
Sure.
I have a picture of my wife on my phone. So I told the guy in Spanish, I said, is this a picture of your mother? And that just that sentence, the guy started laughing and then the whole thing was totally, the dynamic was totally different.
Yeah.
And then I gave him, I don't know, like some people really refuse. That's a whole other discussion too. But I gave him maybe $5 or whatever. And I went for a drink and I let him just do all my paperwork.
Yeah.
And there's a lot.
Fixers can be so cheap and so
There's a lot to
valuable.
discuss about this. A lot of people have a very strong opinion. I remember with my friend fighting about this a lot. Some people have a very strong opinion that you don't encourage local or by giving money.
Don't encourage them to have a job.
Or have a job. Yeah.
He's offering a service. I mean, it's different if someone's panhandling, of course. You don't want to encourage that. But someone that's there to help you with a service, remove some of the complexity.
I think people get very righteous about it.
Yeah,
like it's
totally.
They get the Boy Scout badge, the Boy Scout patch. I went, I don't fixers. And I'm like,
there's that also.
Well, how many extra days do you have?
How much is your time worth?
Yeah.
What's your time worth?
Yeah, and how much
days
of that,
are worth $5 to me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for the price, I mean, it's and the problem is they're going to be at the end of the day going to be way more efficient than you anyway.
They know the process. They know the
people. They know everything. I mean, I've done both. I've done it myself also very often, and sometimes they're not even there, or depending on the border. But when the guy's there and he looks legit, and you have a chance to just relax and have a drink at the cafe, and just you can watch him for like a distance running around.
And that's another reason to be in a car that doesn't cost a lot of money. You're just none of it becomes a stress anymore.
Yeah.
And the practical advice that even if you're not like overland traveling, crossing borders in vehicles, is if you're going into difficult countries, you can still hire those guys that like meet you at the airport for like almost no money.
Yep.
Walk you through customs, save you huge amounts of time. We were doing that. We've done that in Africa before, where it's like an arrival service is like $15.
Super cheap.
And a dude grabs your bag, walks you through the diplomatic line and puts you in a taxi. It's like the best $15 you can spend. In the world.
And it adds to the experience.
Yeah, exactly.
It totally, I mean, aren't we here to interact with the locals?
Yeah.
It's like you see some guy roll through with a Unimog with armor plated windows, and this guy, he never interacts with it. He's in his safe. He's in his bubble. To me, having a fixer laugh with them, understand the process, work with them on it. It's great.
No one said it has to be, a painful and serious experience. I mean, I remember one time when we had the Panama Passage place in Panama, we had to do border runs every 3 months because our border our visa would expire in Panama. So you go to Costa Rica, you stamp out, you stamp back in.
We
had to. Well, we like to do, but
of course.
I remember we will go on the border that's on the west side. There's a smaller border crossing near, I think it's Puerto Viejo on the Costa Rica side.
Right.
The agent there, the border guy there, I think he was probably gay, and I think he was probably liking my friend a lot. So we became really friends with him.
Sure.
And I remember like we were going there one time, and the guys are like, "Hey, do you want to take our job?" So we ended up, French and I, behind the custom counter, stamping people coming in. There was like backpackers coming down, and like, what they have to declare, and then stamping the passport while the guys were having a break in the back.
I love it.
So
that's amazing.
It's
that's amazing. great. And we didn't even get to talk about the fact that you did a mountain bike race across Costa Rica too. I mean, there's no way to pack it all into one.
We'll have to have him on again.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to have him on again. Any other questions coming to mind, Matt? That was a great one.
We'll save that for next time.
That was a great question. So one of the things that we also really like to ask is, and you've covered it a lot in this, but if someone is new to overlanding, what is a couple key pieces of advice that you would give them to help them on their journey around the world?
One of the biggest one is don't focus too much on your vehicle. Focus on where you want to go. And because it's so easy, even myself, like so easy to get trapped and you need to add those tires, like pension and spend that money. And it's not to think about a lot more about planning, depending on how long you want to take.
Yeah.
I would say very quickly right now, and I would say there's probably two approaches. If you are short on time, if you have, let's say, like less than 2 months, just get something, rent a car or buy something local or borrow one from a friend or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to go to Iceland for a month, just get some, they have tons of trucks there.
They do. Super cool trucks. Cooler than we got.
Super nice. If you're going to go for longer than that, then yes, you may want to have your vehicle, but think about more things like fuel. Because when you travel and you have every day, that costs a lot.
It does. It's one of your most expensive things.
It is one of the most expensive things. Think about coming back too. Doesn't matter how long you're going to go, then I have to come back.
Yeah.
And I made that mistake, once. Like the first time I thought, that's it. I'm going forever. I'm selling everything. Like we sold everything. Surfboards, mountain bikes, everything. Like, woohoo, we're living. And you come back after a year or two, you have to start from scratch.
Surfboard.
Yeah, you didn't have a surfboard. That's a problem.
I don't have any furniture. I don't have any computer. I don't have anything at all.
Yeah.
So you have to start from scratch. And just the shock of coming back by itself sometimes is a bit difficult because you've had so much fun and you have a great experience. So
it's changed you.
Cultural shock coming back. Add to that having to like find an apartment, buy all the stuff and everything. That also I think compound that experience.
Yeah.
So I would say just plan. Try to plan the end also.
Yeah. What does that mean? Maybe make sure you have some support because you're going to be a changed person when you come back.
Yeah. And if you want to travel, and another thing also, if you want to travel for a long time financially, like I think it's also good to have a plan on how you're going to, finance this trip. Because so many times I've seen people, like we've seen this at Panama Passage, right? After a few months traveling, they're like, oh, I like that. I want to keep doing it. How do I make money? It's really hard to make money when you're in Nicaragua or in Mexico or whatever.
And people usually underestimate how much they're going to spend on them.
Also, yeah.
I think.
That's so true.
Yeah. So my advice is, I think, and that's what I do now is work really hard here, make really good money, then spend the money and not try to mix both. It's too
you're
hard.
really good at that. It's like, it seems like you'll kind of, you'll work and then you'll take a sabbatical and you'll really enjoy it. Like there's a couple travelers that I really admire that do that. Like David Prittis is like that as well. Good. Like he works and he travels and they are different things.
Yeah. Dan Grech does that too. Although he's starting to make more money as a traveler too. But
it's so hard. I've tried to do both together. I've done it a few times, and
you don't end up, I don't think that you end up getting the full experience of travel if you're working all the time.
No. You, for sure.
No, I'll take it over not traveling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Because maybe we can, I don't know how much time we have. We can talk about that for sure. This, like because I work in IT, so my work is remote and my boss won't listen to this. But a few years ago, I was in Czech Republic where I was kind of working remote at the time, but I was also visiting and everything. And I remember this one night I had a meeting and it's really hard. So one thing I found out also when it's traveling, it's really, you want to work, it's really hard to find a quiet place. There's noise everywhere, crazy. And then you go to a hotel, the Wi-Fi might not work, it might be down. Sometimes it works better in the lobby. So this one time I had a meeting and I was the one who called the meeting. And so I told my wife, Persephone, I said, we got to find a quiet place. So we found this restaurant that was downstairs, super quiet. Because a restaurant usually starts a bit later or whatever. And so the meeting with the time difference, the meeting was maybe 5, 6 for us and maybe 8 a.m. on the West Coast. And so I'm like, this is perfect on the place, good Wi-Fi, everything. I get set up. I start the meeting. About 10 minutes, it was a Russian club, like a disco club. The DJ came in, cranked the music. I couldn't even hear anything on the phone. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
And that has happened so many times where, you plan for something when you're trying to travel or have a conference call and then so to me, that led me to believe, to conclude that now it's much better to spend 6 months, a year, whatever, make the good money in the US and then go travel and enjoy the trip and not try to mix both together.
And you recently became an American citizen.
Yes,
congratulations.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the best of both. Like you're super nice Canadian and you also have your American citizenship.
I wasn't sure if that was, I was supposed to make that, official, legal or something. But the last time the custom guy when I crossed from Canada to the US, some guy said, I have dual citizenship. I guess he knew already.
Oh, they know.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah. So
they know what you had for breakfast, man.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine then. So now, and actually it's, I'm kind of proud of it.
You should be.
Yeah. It was a big deal. Honestly, it was.
Did they have like an assault rifle vending machine at your naturalization ceremony?
We did not, but
we're missing a big thing there.
Well, to be fair, I didn't get the full experience because of COVID. So it was a little bit of a downer in a way, because the way it works is you go to your interview, and then a few weeks after you have the actual allegiance, like the oath.
Oh, sure.
Of allegiance. But because of COVID, after I finished the interview, I was in Boston. She said, by the way, hey, do you want to, hey, this morning we do a ceremony, every hour. So I was by myself. I went upstairs in America. But it's a big milestone for sure. For sure. To be fair, I'm also really, really happy that I get Indian one.
Yeah.
Because some countries won't let you have both.
Sure.
So that if I had to choose, then that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, for sure. But you didn't have to choose them. That's good.
Yeah. I get often asked, when you travel, like oftentimes by Americans actually, like, oh yeah, Canada is supposed to be so much better and this and that. So living in both countries, for like almost 25 each, it's like, there's plus and minus everywhere.
Everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Norway. There's not. Well, it's cold there.
Yeah.
So, there's a plus and minus everywhere.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. That was pretty good. But yeah, there's always pluses and minuses everywhere. That led me though to also talk about something else about travel when you ask about overlanding. Also, I think try to pick a destination that will mean something to you. Like for me, I like adventure, right? I like surprises. I didn't like Thailand. I found like Thailand was very predictable.
It's
they
for
have
tourism.
A lot of tourists there. Everything is, I remember like going to the famous bay where they did the move at the beach with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh yeah. Outside of
there was the famous, beach place that was beautiful. They had like 12 different speedboats. You had to put like a sticker on us. You won't lose track of who was on which boat,
Yeah.
Kind of like the same experience.
If you go to those places in Asia that are the touristy spots, it can be a little overwhelming. But if you can get off the beaten path pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's also very, very true. But then again, you go to South Africa.
Yeah.
Then it's a surprise every corner.
It is every corner.
It's very intense. For the same.
It's one of my favorite places on the planet.
Sure. I think I will say the same. Also,
I'm going to retire someday, and I'm going to be doing the podcast from South Africa.
Did you have the chance to go to the Apartheid Museum?
No, I have not, and I need to do that. I need to do that.
I could do Namibia. I really like Windhoek. It reminds me of
Windhoek's super great.
Yeah, I need to go back. Our stuff got stolen in Windhoek. That was my experience over there. So we got there. Our master cylinder brake, the brake master cylinder was leaking on the truck. So when we got to Windhoek, the first thing we did was to go to the Toyota dealership to buy one. Like that's often the case in Africa. It was behind a wall, right? It was kind of a closed yard with a big gate. So I drove in there, go to the service desk, and start looking for a part. And then we came back, and someone had jumped the fence, got in the truck, all our stuff.
Oh no!
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. And then I remember going to the hotel the same day, and there was a big sign at the hotel. It said something like go out at night, get stolen, experience, or whatever. Some guy had made like some sort of apparently it was quite common over there. So that's what we got to find out.
I think it just keeps getting better there.
Maybe.
I think there's been a lot of
improvement.
Money that has
a lot of money.
But honestly, it was mostly our fault. Like we let our guards down, and that's always when it happened, right?
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Estonia, the only time I've ever been robbed.
Okay.
And I've had some attempted robberies otherwise, but the only time I've ever had vehicle broken into. Super nice hotel, right in Tallinn, which is this super beautiful city. And
the capital.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's very cool. People are very squared away, on the Euro, 24-hour security.
Yeah. When you don't expect, when you least expect.
Exactly.
You can also break into a 70 series with a coat hanger.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. They just broke a window. They broke a window.
Yeah. I came to terms with that story now, but for a long time, it was the most embarrassing time. Maybe my travels is getting my wallet stolen in my Land Cruiser in Turkey. On a toll road. So it was one of those roads like they have in Europe that you put your credit card, and then you go on a road and there's no exit. There's nothing. Right? Once you're there, it's almost like a jail. All you can do is driving. So I was like, okay, this is like super nice. And then I saw this car broken down, and I stopped to help them. And then the two women jumped in the Land Cruiser and stole my wallet.
Oh no.
And then they had some guys waiting for them on the other side of the freeway. So they ran across the freeway and jumped in the car and then left. And then I was stuck there with no more. I always have a fake wallet, but I was crossing in Turkey from Syria. And that was the first time I saw ATM in quite a while. And so I had a bunch of cash, and I had taken my proper wallet that I had left on the dash at that moment. Again, super bad timing. Yeah. And so I got stuck there on the freeway with no more cars and no more cash. Luckily, I had just filled up the tank. So I had almost like 1,000 kilometers of rent in the truck.
Sure.
So I just kept driving for a long, and I made it close to Istanbul, and then I had to exit at some point somewhere. And so I took the exit and then I tried to explain to the guy the best had happened because I couldn't pay for the toll. So the guy finally called one of his friends, and then his friend picked me up in his car, and then he took me to some village where they had an internet cafe. And I had to call my mother and had her transfer me some money on Western Union.
Mom, I need some money. Man, that's so great. But those things happen. They really do.
And you remember those things a lot more.
Of course.
Those adventures for sure.
Those are,
sure, you know.
It's a lesson. Those are all lessons. And they're also great memories for sure too. So
and then next time you're more careful. And and again, maybe one last lesson. It's super safe everywhere.
It is.
It's crazy.
Surprising.
You can go like Mexico is the best example. I never had any.
Yeah, me either.
And there are some corners for sure. I mean, you don't go out at 2 a.m. in the morning and see that wires, but as long as you're careful and you know what you're doing.
Unless you're a long way up.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're going to do a really bright bus.
Yeah.
We have a security concern, so we're going to try and get to Juarez at night.
I talked about this last night. I did not understand the ending.
Yeah. First half, awesome.
Yeah.
And then there was this bus, and I'm like,
it was confusing.
It was very confusing.
It seemed like it took more time to make the bus than just to finish the ride.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. It must be somewhere.
Who knows? Maybe they thought it was a good story.
Maybe a good show. Maybe something good for the show. I mean, taking a bus in itself sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, totally.
Never done it, but thinking about it.
And then they bought such a bad bus too,
I know.
that needed so much work.
Yeah, it's funny. Awesome. Well, Christian, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for all of your support throughout the years. As we said in the beginning, for those of you who have enjoyed the Expedition Portal Forum and the Expedition Portal site, Christian has been key to keeping that all running, and all of the updates to WordPress and you did the forum migration and all those other things. So beyond being such an amazing traveler and such a great friend for such a long time, you've also been so key to the success of this organization. So thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much, Scott and Matt, for having me on this podcast.
This was great. Super fun.
It's been fun. So hopefully we can do it again soon.
We will.
With COVID, now the borders are reopening. So
maybe we'll do it in Timbuktu when we all go rescue the limo.
Perfect. Yeah.
We can do the podcast inside the limo. Perfect.
Even better.
All right. On that note, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next time.